Hi, it's Kevin Lebates here, and as you can tell from the hat, today's video is a resident security video. And what I want to talk about today is the amount of scamming that is going on in the software development and computer world, specifically targeting developers. It's really quite disturbing because 3 or 4 years ago I didn't really see very much of this going on at all. Now I think it's not quite a daily occurrence, but multiple times a week I get approached on LinkedIn in my direct messages by someone who claims to be running or starting or have raised funds for a blockchain project, and they want me to work on it as an architect or a senior developer or sometimes even a CTO. And these outreaches are scams. What they are doing is they're trying to get me to download a repository from GitHub or Bitbucket, run it, and then that repository will install malware on my computer that scans my files, looks for things that look like private keys to crypto, any sensitive information that they can find, to then email or send it back to some server somewhere so that they can effectively rob me. And the quality of these scams has improved dramatically. By that I mean that back in the early days it was pretty obvious that the person scamming me was a scammer. It would be a brand new account that had been created on LinkedIn with no followers and no posts and half the information in the profile missing, and that was the immediate giveaway that it was fake. Now they're hacking accounts, so sometimes you get approached by a profile that is 5, 10, 15 years old, has a significant number of followers, because it's a real account. It's just no longer under the control of the person who created it in the first place. Now, there are usually some giveaways though, so if you're a developer and you've been approached by one of these scammers, the first thing to look out for is a disconnect between the history of the profile and what they're asking you to do. So it's unlikely that an HR representative from Kentucky or a comedy troupe manager from Las Vegas or a solar panel salesman from California is going to suddenly approach you and try to hire you to work on an NFT marketplace project or a decentralized exchange project. That doesn't make sense. So that's your first red flag as far as I'm concerned. The next thing is that there'll be no quibbling over your fees. Now that works for me because I tend to charge more at the upper end of the spectrum compared to an average to inexperienced developer. But again, when they approach and say we're looking to pay you 30 or 40 euros an hour, and then you say, well actually I want something more like 10 times that, then you would expect a normal company to say, I'm sorry, you're too expensive, or to try to bargain down your hourly rate. These scammers aren't going to pay you, so they don't really care, and so they immediately came and say, yes, sure, that's difficult, but we can do it. They often use the same backstory. They're looking for you because they had a previous developer who unfortunately turned out not to be very good, is a common one, although that has happened in genuine projects to me as well, where I've been approached by a company who say, well, our previous hire completely messed it up, can you come and fix it for us? Then of course the big giveaway is how quickly they try to get you to download the GitHub or Bitbucket repository. And it may be that they're asking you to work on the project. Sometimes they try to convince you to download and run the repository as a test exercise. So the idea is that you're supposed to solve a problem that they claim is in the repository to prove that you're good enough to work for them. But in any case, that's the key of the scam. They're trying to get you to run this repository, and the repository will do something nasty to your computer. So one way around this is, when you're first approached with a potential job, don't download and run anything on your main work machine. Have an old spare laptop, preferably connected to the network through some other access point, like your mobile phone or something like that, so that if it all goes wrong, they're not getting anything valuable. If you want to be extra sneaky, you can actually put a bunch of fake private key files on your computer so that they waste their time examining them to try to get hold of funds that don't exist. Now, once you've got the repository, don't download it, would be my first piece of advice. Go to the GitHub site, and I find it a good exercise to try to work out what it is that the repository is trying to do. In the past, a giveaway was that in your package.json file there'd be a child process package, which was a compromise one on NPM. FS 1.0.0-security is often a giveaway that something a bit suspect is going on. Now, these things will all change over time. Recently, I've seen repositories where on some random file at the end of it is a long string of obfuscated JavaScript code that is malicious. Sometimes what they do is construct from obfuscated variables around the code a URL, and then they use a fetch or Axios call to collect the malicious payload from there and run it with an eval or a function statement. So another thing to do is to do a search for an eval in the code base. There's no reason for an NFT marketplace or a decentralized exchange to contain an eval function or call to eval. So that is a definite no-no. That means do not run that code at all. Although, as I said, if somebody tries to get you to download a GitHub repository within the first 5 minutes of you talking, you know that you can't trust them. So those are the techniques I use at the moment to filter out these scams. At some point I'm going to get bored of the exercise of digging into what's going on, but for now it's kind of a handy refresher in the things that are currently going on in terms of scamming developers. And some of you may be wondering, well, what exactly is this scam code doing? And so typically the aim of the scammers is to run some code on your machine that then installs a backdoor server which scans your files, packages them up and sends them off to some other server controlled by the scammers that they can then pick throughout their leisure, try to crack with password crackers, things like that. And they can be scanning for all sorts of things, mainly these days key files for blockchain wallets, because that's where the richest pickings are. Anyway, I think the final observation worth making is that these things are just going to get more and more sophisticated. As I said, initially they used to create profiles, now they're using hacked profiles. Presumably at some point in the future they'll also be using AI. We've already seen things in the news where people have faked voices, faked video even, in calls to try to hide who they really are and make them look more convincingly real and human. No, I've just described scammers as inhuman. I guess in one sense that is what they are. So it is just going to get worse and worse and harder to spot, and that's to the detriment of us all. Hopefully we'll have people stepping up and helping with the production of tools to make protecting us against these kind of things easier. It's one of the reasons why I work with Resonance, because that's one of their missions. And but it is an arms race. The scammers improve, and then we have to improve in response to fight them off. I think I'll wrap that up there now. I hope you found this video interesting, and let's see what the future brings. Bye for now.